Schools of Filipino Heritage used online forums to deepen their knowledge of Filipino culture and language through exchange between two communities. The exchange they participated in was based on the Cultura project. Cultura was created by Gilbert Furstenberg and colleagues Sabine Levet and Shogi Warren at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
It's a project that takes place within the language class, where the focus is indeed on intercultural communication. Usually in a language class, especially in an intermediate level, which is where Cultura takes place for us at MIT, usually the focus is on the language, learning about the language here. It's the opposite, is that the focus is on intercultural understanding, but of course within that project we work with the language and we learn about the language, but the language through culture, which is the reverse of what usually happens.
But learning culture, which Edward T. Hall has called the silent language, is different from other kinds of learning. That is why Gilbert Furstenberg created Cultura.
You learn, it's not an accumulation of facts, not just a simply series of facts. This is what Americans do, this is what the French do, this is how they think. This is really based on the process of discovery, of exploration, where where things are constantly looked at from different points of view, where questions are constantly raised. And so it's really a different kind of pedagogy. It's very much a student-centered pedagogy based on exploration, discovery, inquiry, and where students gradually construct, with each other's help, with the help of their partners across the ocean, with the help of the teacher, gradually construct individually and collectively an understanding of the other culture. So it's very much a process and of analysis, of reflection, of inquiry, and very much within the constructivist approach to learning.
The idea for Cultura arose when I was teaching a class in comparative film. We were examining French films and their American remakes. I noticed how rich these films were as a means of examining differences between French and American culture. And I wanted to add a dimension that would enable French and American students to discover these differences together online. Just looking at the posters, for instance, you can already notice a big difference. In the French one, the baby is nowhere to be seen, and you barely see a woman's leg and heel. In the American poster, on the other hand, the three men and the baby have already formed a close-knit family. The question is why? What is the significance of these two visual representations? This is what students decipher as they compare the two films and explore what they reveal about their underlying cultures. And this comparative approach was the inspiration for Cultura.
Teaching these concepts of culture is a huge challenge. One approach that often proves useful is to start with images, objects, and words and try to see what lies behind them, what they may say and reveal about the different cultures. Cultura was designed to help students examine their own and others' concepts, attitudes, values, and ways of interacting with and looking at the world. Cultura also helps us use another culture as a window on our own culture, or perhaps it would be better to say as a mirror of our own culture.
One of the things that I've really discovered, but which is obvious in a way, but wasn't obvious to me at the beginning, is that what the students learn, they learn very much obviously about the other culture, but they also learn enormously about their own culture. By looking through the mirror of another culture, questions are raised that makes them focus back on their own culture, on the way they see things, on the way they look at things. And so I think that's really one of the great benefits, if you want to have a project such as this, is because it makes students very much aware of their own values, beliefs, attitude, and try to understand them, where they come from and why they exist.
Cultura uses a comparative, cross-cultural approach. At MIT, for example, American students who are taking an intermediate French class work with French students who are taking an English class at a French university, taught by a project partner in France. Sharing a common website and calendar, students from the two sides work together. First individually and then collaboratively, students analyze similar materials originating from both cultures that are presented in juxtaposition on the common website, and subsequently enter into cross-cultural dialogues about these materials via online discussion forums, as well as in their respective language classes. Students find remarkable differences between cultures in seemingly ordinary places. For example, when asked to compare and analyze images in advertisements for ice cream in the US and France, students came up with the following observation.
Ice cream advertising in the US is much more family-oriented. I guess in the US, ice cream is not considered that much of a luxury, and cheap sweets are mostly advertised as just that, cheap and colorful. It is unusual for sweets to be advertised as sensual or almost sophisticated.
In France, advertisements for ice cream are often linked to sex to give the illusion that eating ice cream is a very sensual thing.
Let's look at how one exchange proceeded between MIT students and their counterparts at INT in Evile, France. First, students make word associations online. Each side works on its own language, then students compare their word associations. Since their answers appear side by side, students are able to really see the differences. Students share their observations about word associations and discuss their views with each other.
Hi everyone. When I first read the words all of you used associating to individualism, individualisme, I felt completely shocked. The ideal that Americans hold so closely to themselves is scorned by another country. It is so fascinating that we have such different interpretations of the same word.
These kinds of questions lead to lively discussions online.
It is interesting that most of you view individualism as a negative trait, whereas most MIT students view it as positive. Americans think of freedom, expression, choice, etc. when they think about individualism. But the most prevalent words from your side were égoïsme and solitude.
A big hello to the students at MIT. Basically, Americans have a positive vision of individualism. They define it as a form of transcendence of their personality and of each of us, a way of defining themselves as individuals. The French define individualism not as defining themselves as individuals, but more as departing from or acting against a group.
In the classroom, students use language they have seen in the online forum discussions, learning authentic vocabulary and grammar direct from native speakers' postings. In 2008, the National Foreign Language Resource Center at the University of Hawaii put the Cultura model to work in a new context. The university's Asia-Pacific focus made it a perfect place to extend the Cultura model to new audiences. The NFLRC invited 4 work teams associated with 4 languages and cultures.
Here we see the login screen for the University of Hawaii National Foreign Language Resource Center Summer Institute 2008, a live institute where participants all got together in person, but also interacted in the courseware system called BRICS. Summer Institute 2008 was designed to help participants design projects based on the Cultura model for 4 different groups who got together here online in this Summer Institute website. As you can see in this screen magnification, a Chinese group, a Japanese group, a Samoan group, and a Filipino group. Each group had a project work area inside the Summer Institute where they could have a discussion as they were planning their project. Each group also worked on a planning document. Several groups used Google Docs, which they used to define the goals of their group and to define the cohorts who were going to participate and the procedures they were going to follow. As each group designed its project, they created and placed content in their original cafes. Each of the 4 groups put distinctive activity designs in their cafe. For example, in the Chinese cafe, participants were asked to give word association responses to words with the same dictionary definition in English and Chinese. To reveal differences in cultural values, respondents in the US and in China placed on a given concept, such as relationships or gift-giving. In the Samoan Heritage Students' Electronic Pathways site, participants were asked to respond to culturally significant images. The Samoan Electronic Pathways Cafe joined students from Hawaii and from American Samoa. In Hawaii, there were high school students and university students, and in American Samoa, there were students at a community college. In the various cafes, the teachers defined certain topics and then the students discussed them, sometimes using English and sometimes using the language of the cafe. Here we see the China-USA Business Cafe. This cafe was an exchange between students at the University of Hawaii and students in Chongqing, China, who were studying business English. The whole idea was to acculturate each other to the culture of business in the US and the culture of business in China. Discussion forums help the students notice similarities and differences between the way students on different ends of the exchange responded. In the Japan-Hawaii Cultural Exchange, we had students in Japan at a high school joining students at a Hawaii high school to do similar kinds of things where they were responding to surveys on the question of family. The Filipino Cafe was unusual in that this cafe connected students who were not in-country in the Philippines. One group was in Hawaii and one group was in California, but they were using Filipino language to compare their impressions of Filipino culture in these 2 different places, so they were asked to do things like respond to a video. And as you can see, they were using Filipino a lot, even though neither group was in the Philippines. The 4 groups of faculty designers created a rich variety of activities in summer 2008 using their common website and then During the subsequent academic year, each group used its own website to accomplish its own tasks.
After the cafes were run, instructors reflected on their experiences.
It's also different because a lot of the students are grounded in the same language but different cultural experiences. And those cultural experiences is a result of more of the geographical locations, more of the different types of cultures that they come in contact with. Like, for example, American Samoa, a lot of the community, the majority of the community is Samoan. So it's more like they are embedded in the culture. And then we have those same students who've been embedded in the culture more coming towards UH Manoa. So they still have that culture, but now they're trying to keep that culture or those experiences in sort of an academic institution. A lot of the students that we have at Farrington High School, they have we have them across the board. We have students who are fluent in Samoan, who have migrated recently from the Samoan Islands, to students who have been born and raised here in Hawaii. And their command of the language varies depending on how strong their family is in speaking the language and practicing the culture. So to me, it's different, the same language, same culture, but it's experienced in different communities.
Students reflected on their learning in the cafes. Material that is created as the cafes unfold can become a rich source of data for reflection and research. Professor Dorothy Chun of the University of California, Santa Barbara, who was also on the Institute staff, explains. Interested educators can learn how the use of these tools can change the way culture is taught in the classroom.
First step would be to learn as much as they can about Cultura. Go on the website, find out a description about Cultura, what the methodology is about, look into the archives, look into the faculty forum, see what type of questions have been asked and how they've been solved, find out about the technology requirements, and above all, be convinced that they're very interested in working on cross-cultural communication.